This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Habayim. We continue the Orchos Chaim of the Rosh. Just a reminder, Be'ezus Hashem, next week we're going to be switching the time to 5 p.m. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And again, next week, 5 p.m. We're up to Ois Samach Vav, 66. Al tizgoya al abriyos, do not be arrogant over a people. V'tia shval ruach, be lowly of spirit. V'ke'afar, be like dust. Shahakol dashen by, that everybody steps on. Be like dust that everyone steps on. Now, we know that the Rosh already warned us about gaiva. In fact, if you go back to the beginning of the Sefer, the opening comments of the Rosh are in Ois Aleph, Lehisrachik min hagaiva betachlas harichok, to distance yourself from gaiva, with the epitome of distancing. So what's the Rosh adding here? That not to be arrogant over people and to be humble of spirit. So clearly what the Rosh is saying, says Rav Goldberg, is that one has to ensure that the gaiva that is not present in one's interactions with people. In other words, the humility needs to extend to one's interpersonal relationships, to be like dirt and dust that everyone steps on. Rav Chaim Kanievsky cites that which we say in Masechta Derech Eretz Zuta, Parak Gimel, Hava shval ruach b'fnei kol adam, and we daven in Shemona Esrei, v'nafshi ka'afar la'kol tiyah. In Eruvin, Daf Nun Daled, the Gemara says if a person makes himself like a row that everyone steps on, one's learning will be maintained in their mind. And also Masechta Derech Eretz, Parak Aleph, to be like the threshold that everyone steps on, and like a peg that everyone hangs their stuff on. So that means that the encouragement of humility applies to every person, to everyone. V'nafshi ka'afar la'koil tiyah. One should be like dust to everyone. L'chol adam, without any exception, as the Ramban says, that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked Moshe to lead the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Shlach na biyad tishlach. Send the one you usually send, but the Ramban interprets biyad tishlach. Send anybody. Anyone but me. Anyone is more suitable and suited than me, as Ramban writes in his letter. V'chol adam yeh gadol mimcha be'einecha. And many wonder, how is it possible to consider oneself lower than anybody? There are some people, they seem to be more chashav than others. Some people seem to be lower than others. So in the Peirosh Ion Tefillah, he brings that one should genuinely consider others on a higher level, greater than they are. And if you wonder how that's possible, I'm a Talmid Chacham, he's an Am Ha'aretz, I do mitzvahs, he is involved in Havli Olam Hazeh, how could I think he's better than me? So the Ion Tefillah says that we know people are governed by their makeup, by what their material is made out of, by their mezeg, by their yesoidos. We know that the 4 yesoidos of matter, which is Adama, Ruach, Mayim, and Afar. In other words, there are the 4 yesoidos of matter. There's earth, wind, water, and fire. Eish, Ruach, Mayim, and Afar. Eish, Ruach, Mayim, and Afar. And they cause different makeups and different natures and different personalities. And some people are more inclined toward acting properly and being balei chasadim and being balei midos, and other people are less predisposed. Some people have an easier time being good than others. And therefore, when you look at your friend, you should recognize that it's very possible that the little that he does with the makeup that he's given is possibly much more valuable in the eyes of Hashem than what you do with the makeup that you're given. Maybe you're more predisposed to do the right thing than your friend is. In fact, the Iyun Tefillah says that it's possible that Gam lefi yosher mizgacha adayin lo higata lechatzi tashem achavisam toselacha lefi achanas nafshecha. Maybe based on what God has meted out to you, you haven't even fulfilled half of what you're able to, and your friend, who has achieved much less, maybe he has accomplished much more relative to what he's been dished out than you have. And in fact, the Iyun Tefillah learns that this is pshat in the Gemara. The Gemara says that David was greater than Shaul, because Shaul had a very good nature. He was predisposed to good. He was like 1 year old who never sinned. And David was Admoini, he was red, he was fiery. And therefore Shaul did one Avera, but he could not recover from it. And David committed 2 sins. And Va'olsalai. Why? Because David was greater relative to the makeup that he had than Shaul was relative to the makeup that he was given. Now, regarding the midah of humility, Rav Goldberg cites a story brought in the Sefer Sa'aras Eliyahu, said over by Rabbi Avram, the son of the Gra, that the Gra was always pained that he did not reach the level of humility of a certain Rav. We know that the Gra would prav galus, he would go out into exile, and one time he was learning in the Beis Medrash, and in the evening the Rav came over to him and invited him for supper, and then it was very late at night, and the Gra went to lie down, and the Rav offered him a certain blanket, and this blanket was made out of a warm garment from the Orchos sheepskin. And the Gra was concerned for the shita of the Rambam that we don't paskin like that. Maybe sheepskin has shatnez in it, and the Gra let the blanket slip off him. And every few moments the Rav was learning there, he sees the blanket on the floor, he gets up and he picks it up and he covers the Gra, and it happened again and again and again. And after a while the Rav said, kindly, it's a little bit disturbing to me, could you just try to make sure your blanket doesn't keep falling off? And the Gra just whispered, Shatnez, Ladas Harambam. And the Gra said, oh, the Shatnez, you're worried about Shatnez? Oh, okay, I understand. And the Rav went and he got him a different blanket. And the Gra, his whole life was pained that he didn't reach the madrega of humility of this Rav. Here he had this unknown guest who has this seemingly ludicrous chumrah, and until the Rav figured out that this was a great Talmud Chacham, but he figured the person just had some ridiculous chumrah, and still it didn't startle him, it didn't rattle him. He said, oh, that's your chumrah, and he went to get him a different blanket, and it didn't bother him. Mav Rabbi Sai, Rav Goldberg cites an incredible comment of Rav Shlomo Alkabetz. When we talk about a person should be like dust that everyone steps on, he quotes the Reishis Chachma. What's the analogy to dust? We know dust, when it's thick, it doesn't work. When it's fine and ground, it's much better. So too a person should be like dust, that the more a person is makabel b'zyonos, the better off he is. Rav Shlomo Alkabetz says, we should learn humility from God, because on this very day that we read about in the Parsha, that the Bnei Yisrael said, Eila Elohecha Yisrael, and they made the Egel, and they basically ditched the Ribono Shel Olam. What did the Ribono Shel Olam do on that day? God fed them the man. So the Jewish people said, we don't need you, God, and God still fed them and sustained them and supported them. That is the humility of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that, says Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, is the midah of enafshi ka'afar la'kol tiyah. Be like a doormat that everybody steps on, and the more you allow people to step on you, the better it is for your neshama. Okay, that concludes Ois Samach Vav. Bez Hashem, next week we go back to 5 p.m. See everybody tonight. We have an amazing share. If you were there this morning, we have some added chidushim, and wishing everyone a wonderful day. Kol Tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.